Okay. Let me make sure all my stuff is right because last week was not okay. Uh, Welcome to the Abject Damn Your podcast. This is episode 8, and we are talking to Nicole, who is a writer. These are the easier conversations for me if you've been watching any previous episodes because I already understand and I don't have to learn anything on top of talking to people. So, real quick out the door, this is still a fairly new podcast. None of the conversations are edited in post. And in keeping with the theme of the show, all the bruises and mess ups and mistakes are kept up for posterity to show how we grow and change and learn from our mistakes. If currently my link tree is up there in the QR code, so if you scan that, it'll go on all my things. Currently, I have my Extra Life link up there because I forgot to take it down from the episode that came out on Monday. And as a reminder, if you find anything in here anything in here that is of value to you, you can send it out to anybody. Recommend anybody. Find me on all the socials, and send anybody my way who might want to talk. I'm trying not to monetize people's stories, and I don't want to do ad reads. So if you could just get this out there, there are a few links out there that can maybe help with this process as well. During the episode, there is a separate QR code that's going to be up for Rainbow Babies. So if you guys want to donate to help out there, we can go ahead and scan that QR code and we'll go ahead and take you to their donation page. So I think I got through that intro way quicker than I have in the past. So we're going to go ahead and roll the intro, and then we're going to talk to Nicole. I looped the intro again. I keep doing that. Okay. So welcome. So we're going to talk about some familiar territory here. So I usually use some prompts for this, but as I've been talking to more and more people, I'm learning that this kind of happens a little bit more naturally than I expected it to. So kind of where the first thing I start out is tell us a little bit about yourself, as much or as little as you want, what kind of artist you are, which we kind of covered already. And I like to, start out with what kind of experiences may have inspired you to either do that art or continue to do that art, or as a writer, what kind of inspired you?
Okay, well, a little bit about me. I am a mom of 2 now. That's new. I have one child that has cerebral palsy, and the other one is a typical child. So that's fun. I get to swing back and forth between both worlds. My son has definitely taught me a lot of things that I had never, ever in my entire life would have ever even looked into. It wasn't something that was a part of daily life. And he is a pretty cool guy. My daughter is not far behind. She's only 2 months, but she's got a huge personality. Other than that, I mean, I'm just super happy with my partner, my boyfriend. We are breaking ground to put a garden in. It was something that was kind of like a life goal for him and a life goal for me, and it was shared. So that's really nice, getting to plan out gardens and landscape. That's all new. My biggest phobia is worms, so that makes it very interesting to garden.
Yeah.
And you unearth one, and you're trying to not scream and run through the cornfield. So I'm definitely trying to conquer fears. I am definitely on another restart of like self growth, self care, um, being more aware of different things like anxiety and depression and where it's coming from. And once I find the root, kind of working with it and around it and looking at it to kind of get rid of it so I can
Yeah.
move forward. And I'm at 35, I'm still trying to figure out new life goals to achieve. I finally achieved several of them, so I'm pretty proud of myself. And uh, doing different forms of art. My anxiety would never let me do that before. So, not last year, but the year before, I started working with stained glass. A friend of mine, her dad has a studio. So, for like 9 months, I worked in stained glass, and it was really fun. And I definitely have a deep want to go back to that because it
That's
was
nice.
yeah, picking out like the glass, the colors, and the designs, and of course, everything I picked was like bats or a glass coffin that you can open up the lid, like just
Yeah.
different, very much me things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay.
And writing, I started writing in elementary school. I thought it was fun. I once I realized that people who wrote books, they weren't any really different than me and I could do it
Hmm.
too, that kind of really sparked that in me. And I still have like composition notebooks from the early 90s with like really random scary stories that are not finished, but they made me laugh. I kept them. And I went to college for writing. I was published once in like a campus publication, and
That's
then
good.
life kind of happened and derailed me a little
Yeah.
bit.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's all.
So,
This
I
is
mean,
most of me.
what one publication is more than many of us. So, you know, it is a, it is a positive, and
It definitely made my day.
yeah. So,
Oh,
I really got to get better at remembering how I am supposed to lead a conversation. Um,
that's okay.
I
I mean, if you
normally,
want me to put something, I can.
I normally sit in the background of conversations and let them happen around me. So this is really
Same.
good. So,
Well, you're doing good.
as a writer, what would you consider the dream to be? The
Oh,
utmost goal, not necessarily just success, because I like to ask the separate questions. One is, what do you
right.
consider successful versus what do you consider like the dream, the absolute pinnacle of what you would want to achieve?
That for me would probably be being able to sit down and get from start to finish an entire project done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have so many partial projects and different pieces of things that at any moment I could pick them up and start working on them again. But for
Yeah,
me to see something completed and bound, would be like the day that I would go treat myself to a really nice glass of wine or something and
yeah,
take a bunch of selfies in romantic settings to brag about it, like, look what I
yeah,
did, guys. Like
yeah,
that's the creme de la creme for me.
yeah, yeah. The finishing of, like, even every time that I finish like a draft, because I'm working on my fifth novel, and I've
Wow,
never,
awesome.
I've still never published anything, and you're working on it and you tell yourself this is the one every time because you have to, or you don't finish
Right,
it. And every time, like, I get through a draft, like I'm on the third draft of it now, and when I get through it, I celebrate a little bit because it is an achievement. It's like every time you do a draft, it's like 120, 150,000 words, and that's a lot.
right.
That's a lot of time. And um, so, what would you consider success then? If your dream was to at least finish something and get through it and have a full product that you're happy with, what would you consider to be a success separate from the dream?
Hmm. Um, I think from that point, it would depend on which project I finished. I am
Hmm.
notorious for having multiple writing projects in multiple genres. I had lots of things that would need illustration, but I think if I just pulled one out, it would probably be the one that I was really passionate about in college. It was supposed to be a graphic novel, and it was
That's nice.
supposed to be a series. Yeah, I really got into graphic novels, and if I could see that fully illustrated, it's supposed to be a series. If I could see it done from beginning to end, illustrated, so that I could show it off to people, they could read it, that would probably make my heart very happy. It's still something I think about daily.
Hmm.
I revisit the characters, the different scenes. I had so much fun planning it. And I also like researching. So a lot of it was different points in time coming together to like coexist. So I took two time periods that I really, really loved and I smushed them together, and getting to look at the different things that would have been historically accurate for like settings and backdrops. And it was a lot of fun. It was a project that I really didn't have to think too hard on. It just kind of was very
Hmm.
organic. I don't know where it
Those are the
came from.
best.
I would sit in
Yeah.
class, yeah, and it just kept rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling until I was like, I have to write this down or I'll never remember it. But here I am with all these different life events that have happened.
Yeah.
And I might have forgotten some of the names of people and
Hmm.
characters, but I still remember like the meat and potatoes of it, which is really nice.
It happens,
It's kind of there.
and that's kind of the purpose of this too, is to not just for like, because we were talking earlier about normalizing, you know, the difference between being a writer or an artist versus being a hobbyist, but it's also for us is as I'm talking to more and more people, I'm learning that my experiences with like the things that make me feel inept or like I'm failing are actually
Yeah,
just things that are endemic to what we do. And I'm learning that more and more. And I think the more, I'm hearing from people that I've talked to, and they're like, you know what, I've been doing this thing more since we talked about it. And I've been, because I'm thinking about it. And because we don't get to talk about these things. Like, I know a lot of people, and if somebody that I know that's close to me, they'll ask me about my writing. And if it's one of those people that I can talk to about it, because I know that they actually care and they are interested, and I'll talk to them about it. I don't tell them those things, though. I'm still not going to tell them the negative things. I'm going to tell them the things I'm happy about, the things I'm proud of, and what my plan is. But I'm still going to keep that to me. And I think that just the idea that we giving this little space to just say the shit that is really frustrating that we don't get to
yes,
talk about is cathartic. And so I mean I and I'm learning just for me that like for the pandemic, the entirety of the 2 years, I wrote a page. I've been writing my entire life, and for 2 years, I almost wrote none at all, and it killed me. But that at that time, the anxiety and depression was just
right.
immense, and it was crippling, and it stopping. I've talked to other people before, and it's like sometimes you feel like if you stop doing it, you feel like a failure, but it's still if there were no obstacles, if there were no day to day that got in your way, if you were left with full resources to do whatever you wanted to do with your time, what is the one thing that you would do every day, all day? If money was no issue, if time was no issue, what would you do in that
Wow.
time?
Um,
I would write. I mean, I that's always my answer, and I like to hear what other people say. Like because when I was talking to Michael a few weeks ago, he said we had a list of things that he does as a creative, and when he answered that, none of those things were that thing. he was like, well, we've been talking about all these things, but I would bake bread. And that wasn't anything that we talked about. And I that's a question I like to ask. So if you were left with the freedom and time and sustainability to do whatever you wanted with your time, to create anything that you wanted to create, what would that be?
In that situation, I honestly believe it would be a toss up between writing and probably, um, very honestly, reconnecting with like nature and working on like the more spiritual and non-Christian way of soothing my soul, I guess is a good way to
Yep.
put it. Whenever I had no children and I did not have the events that have taken up 10 years of my life,
Mm-hmm.
I would walk around in nature and I would just be. And it was so peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And my anxiety was not anywhere near where it is now. My depression was minimal. And I was able to just really feel connected. And it really helped write. It really helped to be creative because
Mm-hmm.
usually in those moments of time, I had some of the best creative ideas I've ever had. And not just for writing. I was really interested in film
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of stuff that went with it. I was connected to a lot more people that could help with those things. And I was really interested in photography and all different kinds of visual art. And I would come up with ways of smushing everything all together. And it was just the most amazing feeling. And I would love to be able to go back to that, to just create and create and create and
I've heard
multiple
that a lot.
different things.
Yep, I've heard that a lot. My thing is like your definition of the dream versus success is opposite of what most people say, because most people say the dream, the ultimate goal would be to, you know, be a renowned thing. Everybody wanted to have my things. Everybody wanted to see my things, and not like in an egotistical way. But if you succeed at
Right,
something, and then it goes farther beyond that, and you become like the, you know, a household name off of it. Is usually the dream,
right,
but the success for most people is usually, for me, the success is always, could I live off of this? If I didn't have to go to
right.
work every day, because 10 to 12 hours of work and then home life and all this other stuff, could I just sit down every day
Yeah.
for that 10 to 12 hours and write
Right.
instead of do a bunch of stuff for other people all day that I don't care about? And I think I really like your answer for that, because it's the opposite of what most people say. And your dream is to just be able to be happy with something that you made, and that's a little bit that's pulling me back a little bit, because I'm thinking I used to feel like that, and I don't really acknowledge that I used to feel like that, and I'm kind of appreciating that a little bit. So I'm thankful that you
Well, good.
did say that. Um, so, is there ever a point in time where you did feel successful, or at least
Yeah.
like, yes, you did? Okay.
Yeah, that was in college, being able to have a poem published. It really felt like this was the start of something. And if I got published, people can see it. It's a college publication. It's nothing out in the open, but there was like a whole like soiree for it, and your name
Mm-hmm.
got to be announced. And that was the first time I'd really been recognized for something, for creating something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was able to actually feel proud of myself. And it was something that I did for me that made me happy,
Mm-hmm.
that came from me with no help from other people. Nobody had input in it. So it was kind of like proving to myself that I didn't have to be codependent on people around me
Yep.
in order to be successful or to feel successful or to feel good about myself. And that all kind of comes back into like I just really kind of want to feel that again. Um, because it wasn't egotistical for me. It wasn't
Yep.
like I'm better than anybody else. It was just like I did it. I did it, and now the pride I have in like my friends and my family and other people, I have it for myself, and this is a really good
It
feeling.
it's validating because I think
Yes.
that with friends and family, like I have I have like I have readers, but they're people who I know they have a they may have an overinflated sense of what I'm capable of. And when you meet those periods, like even at times there have been times where somebody will say this isn't right for us, but this is good, and it sucks. But at the same time, when you actually get the actual response instead of the canned, thanks for
Right.
applying, whatever. When somebody says that to you, it's still like, well, it sucks, but at the same time, this thing is me. Like it might be fiction, it might be slightly removed from me, but this is what I had to say, and somebody connected with it enough to tell me that.
Right.
Because
And
they're
that,
saying this isn't right for us, but still it made a connection to me, and that to me is one of the best feelings, and it's really hard to describe that to people when you spend so much time on something and so much energy, because it's a lot of energy, even if you're not,
yeah.
and it's emotional, and somebody says, you know, I appreciate what you did here, even if it's just two or three of us. It's
Right.
incredibly, it's a really indescribable feeling. So
100%.
so
I totally understand that.
so what I want to I kind of have been playing around with new ways of having this conversation instead of just the
Okay.
things that I had planned, because they don't really. I've been learning things as I talk to other people.
You're
So
evolved.
yeah, one of the things I like to I like to talk about imposter syndrome,
Uh,
because
yes.
this part of the conversation is for me specifically because I am affected by it a lot, and I don't. I'm kind of trying to mind people for how they handle it, because I just handle it by feeling like I'm not good enough for what I do until I feel like I have to write anyway, and I don't really have an out for it. And um, does that affect you? Because I have talked to people that it hasn't. They've never said I don't feel like I never feel like I don't belong in this thing, and I'm like, I'm sure that's
What's that like?
fantastic. Yeah. So does that affect you? I assume so. And how does it affect you? Does something specific cause it? And do you do anything to overcome it?
Um, Unfortunately, because of a lot of things that have happened, it affects a lot of me as a person in like daily life. Um, the creative process, I will have ideas, I will share them with people. Like, would you ever read something like this? Or what is your thought on this? And people will hear my ideas, they get really excited. Do you have something for me to read? And then it's kind of like, I didn't flesh it out
Mm-hmm.
because it's living in my head and it sounds so perfect there. And when I put it on paper, it sounds horrible, and then I don't know what to do with it. And then people are kind of like, oh, well, if you write it down, let me know. I'll help you with it. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am saying I'm a writer and I can't even get it on paper because
Yeah.
once I do, my brain is just like trash, garbage, throw it away. How did you ever think that this would ever be a thing?
Mm-hmm.
And it stopped a lot of projects that I had. Uh, it took me a minute to kind of like, it's currently under progress again.
Yeah.
What really helped me though was being able to have like those walks in nature and to have those conversations with myself of, okay, you feel like you can't get the words on the page, but you're the only one reading them. You are
Mm-hmm.
not going to fluently write a bestseller from start to finish in one sitting with no
Yep.
mistakes ever. And none of the people that you enjoy reading have done that. They have
Yep.
probably had
None of
the
them.
same mistakes as you. And I have to like tell myself these things until I feel better. And then I will sit down, I'll write something. I cringe and I'm like, I just keep going, and it doesn't even have to be the project that I'm working on. I have forced myself to write like stream of conscious. I have forced myself to think of other projects. I have forced myself to just like go out into public. Like at the time I was in college, so I would go to a bar, I'd order food, I'd sit there, and I would just start writing down like descriptions of things,
Hmm.
or like conversations that I would hear, like bits and pieces of people walking through, and trying to learn how to like have better dialogue. And I would force myself to constantly do these things until I didn't feel like I was a little kid putting on a writer's hat and parading as a writer.
Yeah,
um,
I people watch in public, and my wife and kids a lot of time are like, "Quit staring." I'm like, "I'm not," but I'm watching. But
right, they become a
there's a part
character.
of me that goes, they think there's a creeper over here, But
Right,
it's
and I was
how
like
you,
that too.
yeah, that's how you learn about how people function that aren't you. And
Right. And it's it's pretty freeing to be like, this is organic writing. I'm doing it. This is how I flesh out characters, and they don't all sound like variants of me.
the imposter syndrome gets me when I'm really confident, when I'm feeling really good about something.
Oh,
Sooner or later, like I have to fight it, because I'll feel like I'm getting close to something. This is getting farther and farther along, and then it's like, well, what comes next is this big step, like querying agents, or I gotta start doing
yes.
that, and then I'm like, I don't know if I should be doing this, and then it's like, you know, 3 to 6 months of I'm just gonna go, get up and go work every day until I feel like I need to continue, and
Right.
I think it affects people a lot more, because one of the things that I've always, and I think it might be a writer specific thing, because I haven't had a confirmation from people who aren't necessarily writers. I think songwriters I've heard it from, but
Okay.
we always hear the fake it till you make it thing when you start reading about like writers that you admire and writing books about writing, and you know they always say fake it till you make it, and I think that for a long time, even as a kid, like I was trying to do that, and then social media, MySpace and everything started kicking off, and you're like, I'm gonna fake it till I make it, but then I think it kind of sabotages your own drive, because you're pretending to be the people you admire, necessarily looking for the
Right.
thing that you. And I think that has taken me years to get over, because I think that's something that a lot of writers teach younger writers, and I think it's because they've got distance from when they were in those shoes. And I think
Yeah.
older writers specifically, when their favorite writers were younger, they were behind the scenes. The only connection they had to their favorite writers were reading their work. But
Right.
everybody's everywhere now. And I think that
Exactly.
it's not necessarily applicable anymore. So, is there anything you do to get over it, or do you just deal with it till?
Um, right now, it's been more of like the self-talk of like walking myself through things, and then um allowing myself to create internally, um, until I find something that I'm like, yeah, I could work with this. I could build this better. And sending snippets of it to friends, like, what does this sound like to you? And if I get positive feedback, then I will do my best to write just like little chunks of stuff. So like I don't forget names that I came up with, or how this is supposed to affect somebody, or what this person wore. Is it significant? Will it be significant? I don't know, but I'm seeing it. I'm going to write it down. And I kind of just have like these little chunks of blurbs of random things all over my house, in my purse, in my car.
Yep.
And it just really helps to get it out, because even if it's never ever used, it's there. It's something for me to look at. It's tangible, and it's like I created that. This is
Yep.
something that I created, and I did it, and I can do it on a bigger scale when I feel comfortable to do that. And then sometimes I'll actually just go through the scraps that I have and like piece them together to see if it can become something bigger. It works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes make something totally new come out. So
Yep.
I've tried to make it like a very gentle mom talk to myself mixed
Yeah.
with like, let's make this a game.
Yeah. I,
So that's what I
it
found
helps
works.
me because I think we do collect. I think we do. And one of the reasons I do that is because I find myself sometimes going back like a decade. And
Yeah,
I'll say, you know what? I'm better than this now. And that helps me because this, a decade ago, this is the thing that I thought was the thing. And then I'm
right.
looking at it now and I'm going, I've actually grown and I've actually gotten better. And if I thought this was the thing then, I know it's not now because I'm capable of more now. So I think but I also do go back and pull stuff out of things. I do, I do
Yes.
go back and say, I remember this thing that I did once and spend days looking for it. And then I'll say, well, a lot less of this is salvageable, but still some of it is. And
Right. And picking it apart,
yeah,
picking it
and they call
apart,
those
cleaning it
like trunk ideas, and they don't like it when you say trunk ideas, but I think that it's fine. You don't tell them that it's trunk ideas. It's fine. They don't know.
right. Right. Wait until like,
Um,
you're so like so much of a household name that it doesn't
yeah.
matter if you say it.
Yeah, I wrote these in the middle of the night when I woke up from dreams, but I didn't tell you that until after everybody read it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Um, so another thing, I started these out asking people about what advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you like to hear when you were younger, kind of thing. And it kind of, I started asking instead. Um, we tend to get unwarranted advice when we tell people,
yes.
this is what I do, and then well, you should try this. No matter what it is, you get a lot of unwarranted advice. And so
Yes.
what I started asking is if you could go to somebody who has been where you're at an earlier stage in their journey, and you knew that you had to offer them something that you knew they were going to consider unwarranted advice, and you
Okay.
know that they don't want it because you wouldn't want it. What would you
Right.
risk? What would you risk coming off as an asshole for to tell them and give them?
Oh, so many things.
It's a little bit of a harder question, and I kind of like that question
It
better.
really is. I mean, it's a good question though. I feel like somebody, if I had to give them advice for writing, it would definitely be um, to definitely work through the dry spells
Hmm.
of not like being on a project and not knowing where to go with it, to just start something else, to start something like totally random, so at least you're still writing.
Yeah.
For me personally, when I stop, it's really hard to get back into the flow of things for dialogue and different
Hmm.
things. So I feel like telling somebody some motherly advice in that would be to just keep like just make up a bunch of random stuff, make up your own stories that have nothing to do with whatever the project is, and just make up some really weird stuff that's going to intrigue yourself. I have done that, and it's
Yep.
led me down rabbit holes where I'm like, I didn't even know this was a thing. It's a thing. I'm researching it, and then it helped me with other things. So
Something that helps me that I try to when I'm talking to other people about writing. I I like to I like to take conversations that I've had with other people or things that I've overheard. Like if I overhear my kids talking about something, or I'm talking to somebody else about something, I'll later on down the road I'll let it sink in. I'll kind of keep it in my mind, and then I'll go home and I'll write it as if I'm writing dialogue.
oh, okay.
And just I'll write the dialogue. I'll write down the conversation first, just the quotes. Just write what was said back and forth, and then over time you fill it in. And if you can't work on your current project, you're at least taking something that exists that you know sounds like a real conversation, and
Right.
you're growing it into something that it wasn't. And sooner or later, the conversation gets lost in there, and then I've got what I consider a concept draft, and I plug that away somewhere, and I come back to it later, even if I don't do anything with it. But it
Right.
helps me because the dialogue is the bane of my existence. But you can't have a story without people talking to each other. So
Exactly.
I hate it. But um, I think there was something else. Um, is there anything specifically that you were looking to talk about that you don't get to talk about?
Um, I think something that I've kind of thought about a little bit in preparation for this. Um, One of the things as a creative person that kind of stuck with me as a kid was pain as art,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're suffering, you create better art.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that to heart. Like,
Yes.
well, I'm not gonna write if I'm happy because then it's gonna suck. I don't want to suck. I'll wait until I'm going through some really horrible emotional thing, and that's when I'll be creative. And that was
Terrible
something that
advice.
yes, I really had to work
It's
on it.
yeah.
It's one thing to have like mental health issues. It's one thing to have
Mm-hmm.
trauma or something like that that would give you different perspectives on things that
Mm-hmm.
maybe would be healing to write it in a way that it's not your like particular event or pain, but it's similar. So it's kind of almost like cathartic or therapeutic to get it out in a way people around you wouldn't know that it's your pain and suffering, but it's out, it's there on the page. You can look at it and then kind of work with being done with it or around it. But purposefully not creating until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
That was like
Because
some emo
it make
teen angst
yeah,
time.
and it makes you feel like when because I heard people who who I would consider successful say things like that, and it always pulls me out of it a little bit because I'm like, so you're telling me that when you're okay, that you don't work, because to me that tells me that if I'm having a moment where I feel okay, is the artist in me the broken part?
Right,
So when I'm okay, does that mean that I'm an imposter? And then that whole thing starts again, and you get into the habit of saying, "Well, I don't have anything to say right now because I'm okay." It's like I don't need
right,
therapy right now because I'm fine. But it's not conducive to creative because you're removing the creativity out of yourself by saying that. I'm only creative when I'm hurting.
right.
And I do think that that is terrible advice, and I'm glad you brought that up because I wouldn't have thought about that. But
Oh, okay.
I agree because I have heard about that. I have heard of that, and I've been told that, and I think that we believe that when we hear things like that from people that we admire, we take that to heart because we want to know how can I do this thing that I do that I know that you've done so well, and then you hear things and you're like, okay, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try to separate those
Right,
things, and I think that after a life like I've read a lot of everybody's things, this is the book on how to write this. This is the book on how to write this. This is the book on how to write this. And after a long time, you start to think, well, that's the book on how they wrote that. That's the book
right,
on how they wrote that. And there've only been like like not even a handful, probably two things that I have ever read about writing that have actually felt honest to me. That have actually felt like this is how I did it, and this is how you can learn to make your time valuable to you. And that's I don't think I hear that a lot. And I'm glad that you said that because that's really got me a little frustrated with things that I've heard my whole life.
right.
I'm gonna
And
attack the system now. Yeah.
right, like don't listen to it, just burn it with fire.
Just
Um,
do you just
right,
it's harder sometimes to write when you're happy, but I think if you can train yourself to say I can still spend that time in the same way, and
right,
I don't need to hurt to do it because I am that person no matter how I feel about myself or anybody else at that time. So yeah, I
right,
like that. I've learned
right.
something new or get some new cool thing every time I talk to somebody. So
And
um,
that's always good. That's how you know it's a good conversation. So just
yeah,
being like, well, that was a waste of time. Thanks for nothing.
yeah. When I started this, I was like, I'm going to talk to like one person and I'm going to be done. And then like I've actually been looking forward to this. Every time I get somebody, I'm like, I'm so excited. Like
Well,
I keep
good.
saying this, and I'm saying it for anybody that watches this too. But I like to say, like in the last several of these, I've been saying I want to talk to somebody who's a dancer, because if we're talking about things that get in your way or things that make you not want to do it anymore, I can imagine that the the criticism in the dancing community is probably borderline nightmarish at times.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about dancing, and I really just there's a lot of conversations I want to have, and I like to I feel better talking to other writers because I understand them better.
Right. It's comfortable.
It is way more comfortable, yeah. What are I think we probably covered this. I have a what are the biggest obstacles that get in your way, but I think yours are similar, like life things that happen in life and time. Those things create time obstacles.
Yeah, the two most known ones.
Yeah. Mine are. It's gotten easier for me as my kids have gotten older because they become, they're kind of doing their own thing and stuff.
Right.
And I was a single parent of 3 kids for almost a decade, and
wow,
I got very little done. I was in college at the time, and I never finished. Like I was working on a bachelor's in English lit, and it's one of my big regrets. But at this point in time, like I could go back because I was almost done, and I could go back. And at the same time, I'm like,
left.
I have like 7. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, like, do I want to? Because that's going to take away from this thing that I'm already doing. But then I think, well, when I start querying people, I don't have a thing I can officially say I did this thing, and does that make a difference? Does it matter? Well, this person told me it doesn't matter, but I'm seeing over here that it kind of matters. And those are things that I think a lot of people can understand that because that's job related, that's career related. But I think when we start talking about the creative obstacles, a lot of people don't, and because I have a lot of friends that I almost never talk to, people that I almost never see, and inevitably someone at some point will say, "Hey, are you still working on that thing?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm still working on that thing." And they're like, then the conversation of hobby, I'm glad you're still doing your hobby thing, and thanks, but it's not. My job is how I get paid, and then this is how I eventually hope to one day maybe get paid. But thank you for your optimism, your faith in me. But you don't say that. You just stop talking to people about it because,
Right. I think a big thing for me was dreaming of being a writer for so long, and then watching 3 friends of mine or people that I know writing and being published and doing all these things, and I'm just sitting there like, that's what I wanted to do. And people going, well, you have a lot going on right now, you've got a lot of other things to focus on that are way more important. And they are, and it's an absolutely correct statement, but like my inner child is just like, but that's what I want to do. And it felt like everybody else was doing that one thing but me.
And I try to tell myself that, more than one thing can be important. This thing is important, but my thing is also important. But at the same time, like, I don't necessarily buy that all the time because it isn't, you have to find these, I guess, mental gymnastics, I guess, is a good way to describe it, to convince yourself, I can't spend time on this right now,
Yeah, a lot of mine, I mean, I know you had mentioned that some of the stuff might get personal, and I won't go too far down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, you don't have to.
That would be like a 3 hour
Yeah.
come gather on the campfire kind of scenario of a thing. But there was a lot of things going on with my son. A lot of it was legal stuff. A lot of it was custody stuff. A lot of it was
I've been there.
medical. And
Yep.
it was all interwoven and just created this blanket of my brain is fried because
It's
from sun up
suffocating.
to sundown, yeah, it was stifling. I like my creativity was just gone unless it was for entertaining my son or for thinking of something that could be adapted for him so that he could participate or and that's where I limited it to for a really, really long time. So
You
when I
you know why I think that is? You know why I think that is? If I can,
yeah,
it's over the years as I've had those experiences. I believe that is because we feel like that is the easiest thing to sacrifice
yeah,
because
100,
it's the safest thing. Because we know that we're always going to be able to do it. We know that we're always going to want to do it, and we know that we can always come back to it because it's part of us. And I think that it's the easiest thing to give up because it's we don't fear losing it permanently. We don't feel permanent repercussions except time. Because when we're in the middle of all this stuff, it's like just suffocating us, and we can't. We're so overwhelmed with everything. We say, I can lessen this stress and anxiety on myself by putting this thing aside that I know is always going to be here. And I think it speaks to how important it is to us that we're not afraid of losing it, that we're able to do that. So while it feels like a
right,
negative thing, I think it also speaks to the positive role that it plays to us as people, as creative people. So I just
yeah.
that spoke to me what you're talking about a little bit because I've had those. I'm going to put this aside, but it's never been scary to stop writing. It's only scary when you haven't been doing it long enough. After a while, it becomes scary. You're like, I'm going to get back to this because I haven't been doing it, and that sucks. But it's easy to say, I got all these other things I'm afraid I can't manage. I got all these other things I'm afraid that I'm going to lose. So I'm just going to put this thing aside and I'm going to take care of these things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think people don't understand that becomes a conversation about you were a writer or you were this thing. But really, it's just, I don't think a lot of people understand that is actually because it's so important to who we are that we're able to trust that it's not going anywhere.
Right.
If that,
And I
if
mean,
that makes sense.
it definitely does. I know part of it, like I started trying to write again. I was like, this is garbage. Oh my God, I lost whatever I had. It was kind of like a panic, and then I didn't, but I did, but I didn't, but I did.
Yep.
And now I feel like by the end of this year, with how everything is kind of playing out, that there will be a time that I can pick up my notebook and take it with me everywhere I go and start jotting stuff down and slowly working my way back into that. I really 1,000,000% miss having my trademark tote bag
Mm-hmm.
with a notebook and a
Yep.
bag full of colorful pens. I also really enjoy printing off pictures, images of different things that I find joy in and staring at it and thinking about, like, I wonder what that leaf would feel like. I wonder what the weather would feel like. I wonder what I'd be hearing and then creating from that. That was one of my favorite ways to create from things. Finding images that meant something to me for whatever reason and just kind of letting myself like get lost in it.
Yep.
And that's also like really helped me with writer's block. I used to collect like old black and white pictures of people. I go into thrift stores and buy like a random bag of them, go through them, and just start like figuring out who these people would have been.
Yep.
And then I would pair it with going to like an old cemetery and just finding names like, ooh, I like that. And just
that
smushing
that's a
names. And,
that is an old writer's trick too, because I have done that because I've heard of other people doing that. And we have an
oh,
oddity
really?
store here in town, and this lady, she's got all these really cool different things. in there, and it's like an antique shop, but it's also like an oddity shop. And she's got
Okay.
drawers upon drawers of like thousands of pictures from like that people just
Oh,
go, these were my family photos. I don't know what to do with them here. And she just throws them in drawers, and you can just go through and pull out people, and it's like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? These people could be in a thing together, so I'm gonna see what I can do with them. Why are they dressed like, it's a good
yes.
writer's trick. So
Well, definitely. I didn't realize it was a thing until much later. One of
yeah.
my professors told me that because they were like, "Why are you carrying around this bag full of weird photos?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I told them, and they were like, "Oh, well, so and so used to do that," and they were pulling
Mm-hmm.
names out of the air, and I'm like, "Oh, I thought it was my thing," and then I realized it was like when I looked it up, I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's everybody's thing."
It
Um,
speaks to a natural desire to tell stories, because if you're seeing something that has no context and you want to give it context, it speaks to a natural desire. I don't think that it's as much as everybody does this, as much as it is a desire to tell a story about something that doesn't have one. And there's a
yes, I
lot of
like that.
pictures. Yeah, and one thing I've wanted to start doing, so you kind of get to be my guinea pig a little bit here,
Ooh, okay.
is I want to start also talking to people about accountability a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
I didn't have a guest for last week, so I talked about it a little bit for myself on Mondays. But um, I kind of want to down the road. I'm trying to like friend everybody on my Facebook so that I can, periodically see who's, still doing stuff if you're posts and stuff, or even just talking about, what you're doing. And I kind of want to see if down the road, like maybe a year down the road, to touch base with everybody and do like a short little, you know, conversation where we're like, what have you been doing since then? To kind of
Oh,
keep it in your mind that, I have a minor goal that isn't a specific goal. It's not specifically about how far along am I, just how much better do I feel? Have I been thinking about this more? Um, and so like a year down the road, maybe catching up, because
yeah.
I'm gonna be checking in like just through like Facebook and stuff, and checking in like that and saying, hey, how's it going? Or I see that you're doing this. This thing's really cool. I'm trying to start keeping up with people, because I want to know what everybody's doing. Because if this isn't helping, then I don't want to be harming. So, um, but I try to share stuff too myself personally of what I'm doing, and I also think that a really cool idea is that we are unintentionally, or maybe semi unintentionally, we are building a community of people who are talking about the things that people don't talk about. And I'm going to start referencing, I kind of started doing it already, as like referencing things, but I kind of want to start checking in, and what is something that you think that you could do to be more self accountable for your writing. It doesn't have to be like I want to be published or anything, but what is something like, maybe like something you want to try to do like weekly, or like I have a thousand word a day goal. I never meet it, but it makes me at least do something. And if I'm
Right.
doing something, it's better than doing nothing. So
Exactly. Um, Actually, one of the things that I had done and I was very proud of myself for doing it consecutively. I had this really cool book that I got where it was snippets of scenarios where you could um, build different things for D&D. So it
mhm.
would be like what is your favorite food? You're in a tavern and somebody is asking you what you want to eat. Kind of a thing. And I did, I think, like 47 consecutive ones, and I was really
Mhm.
proud of myself. So my goal with that is to kind of do the same thing again, but kind of pick a theme for it and like try to do that daily for a month and kind of see like, okay, May is coming up. You're putting gardens in. Why don't you talk about like what it was like, or what your hopes are for it, or like what's a flower that you think is really pretty but you know nothing about? Research it and like write something down, kind of a thing, just to kind of make it more personalized, but organizing it by month to kind of collect stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like giving myself like 12 different months of having 12 different topics with like up to 30 different things to talk about it would, one, help me learn about stuff, help me start writing again, and
Mm-hmm.
putting together like sentences that make sense and doesn't sound like my 2-month-old wrote them.
Yep. Because it's all
And
habit.
right, because
Yep.
like there's nothing worse to me when I look down at what I just wrote and I'm like, what is that? Like what,
What is it?
why?
What does that mean? What did I just say? Yeah.
Right, like
Yep.
that makes no sense. I
Yeah.
won't even know what this means. But in my head, it's like this beautiful image and everything is perfect, but it doesn't translate.
Yep.
So I'm trying to like hope that'll giving myself different things to think about will help kind of flesh things together and uh, kind of get rid of that frustration of like, this sounds like absolute gobbledygook and I should never pick up a pen again. So it's kind of
Yep.
where it gets,
It does.
where I just
Yeah.
get frustrated, throw a pen down. I'm just like, whatever, I'm burning this. And then 3 days later, I'm like, sorry, notebook, let's do this again.
So
Um,
outside of the normal stuff I ask about, do you still handwrite most of the time?
yes,
You do
yes, and I
that.
have found that I prefer it, even though it
Yeah.
takes longer and sometimes
I do, but I can't.
oh,
My
see, I have
hands. My
arthritis,
hands can.
finger
Yeah. My hands.
joints.
But I that's great to me. I'd love to hear that because that was a I was back in the day. I was adamant: no ebooks, no laptops. I'm gonna everything must be handwritten. Everything must be taught. And I have actually started like outside of my writing. I actually have an app on my iPad where it's a notebook, and I just
It's
I
great.
write my notes, my draft notes. Like I go in and I finish a draft on a chapter. Well, next draft I want to make sure I add this thing in here, so I'll handwrite it, and it's more comforting because I think it feels like there's less 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 filters it has to go through when you're
Right.
handwriting. It just feels more direct to me, and so I still try to sometimes, but I really appreciate that, and not a lot of people still do that, and I really
Right,
appreciate
which
that
is
because
really surprising to me.
yeah,
Um, because that's why I have like 75 notebooks throughout my house with random things in it.
that's
And
great.
I still have a really, I'm still problematic with handwriting, but it goes from print to cursive and it's a
Mm-hmm.
hodgepodge of it. So
Yeah,
sometimes I'll be reading it and I'm like, what,
what?
why? Again, why? What was I
Yeah,
doing? Was I tired? And apparently that's actually like it's linked to like some kind of brain function thing. And I
that's
was like,
cool.
oh well, no, I need to research it, but I haven't got the chance to.
Yeah,
It's supposed to, I think it's linked to trauma or something, and I was like,
yeah, probably.
how
I think a lot of
intriguing.
things, a lot
Look it up.
of a lot of normal day to day things are linked to trauma that most people don't realize that they've experienced. So I think we should get
Right,
on that as a society and make that a more regular conversation.
right.
And it's
Like I don't want to talk about it, but we need to talk about it because
yeah.
apparently you had trauma somewhere. Let's work
Well,
on it.
one of the things I like about this idea too is that anybody, anywhere, like I could be at the grocery store and run into like 4 or 5 people without knowing it that are artists of some kind, but they
Right,
either they don't talk about it or they're entering their journey or they're not confident enough to do it, and also I think that there are a lot of people who who people will say, well, I'm not a creative person, but I think they just haven't found that thing yet because I think it is a part of who we are. I think we, as human beings, before we could talk, we were painting and we were
right.
making vines and we were in caves, trying to tell stories. And I think it's who we are, and I think that the more that we talk about the things that we that get in our way, the more we realize that those are normal things, and that's actually more motivating than it sounds. Like when I started talking about doing this, I told my brother, he was supposed to be my first guest, and he's going through a lot of changes in his life, and he was like, I can't do this. This sounds like a miserable conversation, man. And I'm like, well, I don't want it to be, but that's why you're doing this with me first, because he's like super outgoing, and it's actually turning out to be much less negative than it seems like at face value, because I think it is actually cathartic, because we're not just talking about it, but we're learning. These are normal things. These are just normal things that every creative person goes through. I keep, if you can kind of look around for them a little bit. But I have rejection letters that I keep from famous people, that writers that I look up to.
Oh,
you can
wow.
find like old rejection letters. Like I have a rejection letter where somebody told Kurt Vonnegut that he was a terrible writer and he should stick to his day job. And Carl Sagan once submitted a manuscript to Isaac Asimov, and Isaac Asimov wrote a bunch of notes in there and told him it wasn't good enough, but maybe he should keep trying. And to me, that is one of the most motivational things, to know that some of the greatest people that I have ever read were told that they were terrible, or that they weren't good enough, right, and that they needed to practice. And and I always have these goals. By the time I'm 30, I want to succeed at this.
Yeah.
And by the time, and then I move that goalpost, and it gets farther and farther behind. And then when you get to a certain age, you start understanding that most of the people that I look up to as writers, they were late too, because they were all going through this, but they never talk about it, so you don't know that.
Right.
And I think that it's important to have that conversation there for posterity. So
100%.
We're probably,
it is nice.
We're probably running up on your time, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are. I looked at the time and was like, oh, well.
Yeah, I didn't want to put you in. I didn't want to put you in the position to have to say something, so I figured I'd just toss that out there.
Oh, well, thank you. I was actually getting ready to calculate and figure out ooh, do I need to go now? I think I should, but
let me close this out real quick, and then we'll just give me a minute, okay? This has been really great, and I've had a lot of fun.
I've had a lot of fun. This is not as horrifying as I thought it was going to be. So thank you.
It's not. Even every time I do it, I say that. So, okay. Give me a few minutes.
What?
Okay, so that was great. I don't really have much to say in closing. I think we covered a lot today in a short time. And for anybody that's watching, again, if you find anything of value here, either one of these QR codes will get you somewhere to help somebody somewhere that needs it, even if it's not us, which is sometimes better. If you're a creative or an artist or somebody out there that wants to have this conversation, find me on all the things that are in that thing. And if you know somebody that is, sweet talk them into letting me know as well. I'm down for it, whatever it is, whenever it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and end this. So as always, thanks for watching, and whatever it is that you do, keep at it.